Half of the historic Toussant Louverture audio cell phone tour, which begins in Section C, located at the top of the hill. You will hear 5 amazing stories of those buried on the east side of the cemetery, identified by markers 6 through 10. Occasionally, you will hear transitional music playing as you move between some of the markers in order to give you time to reach each location. Please approach marker 6 near the center of the road and hear the story of Freeman Thomas, narrated by Dan Alexander, Executive Director of Franktown Open Hearts.
Freeman Thomas, born a slave, was a federal soldier during the Civil War. He was a member of Company K of the 12th Regiment United States Colored Infantry and fought for his freedom in the Battle of Nashville. The 12th Regiment U.S. Colored Infantry was organized in Tennessee from July 24th to August 14, 1863. The regiment initially reported for duty at the Northwestern Railroad Department in Nashville on November 3, 1963. The railroad was being extended by the federal forces to connect their main depot at Nashville with the town of Johnsonville on the Tennessee River. Approximately 200 men from the infantry worked on the development of the railroad, while the rest served guard duty along the line of construction. The men were the first to cross the river into Decatur, Alabama, and fought in the intense Battle of Decatur on October 26 through 29, 1864. On December 15 through 16, 1864, the men fought in the Battle of Nashville near the close of the war. The infantry took up guard and garrison duty at the Department of the Cumberland until January 1866. Freeman Thomas, like all African American Union soldiers at the time, was paid $10 per month for his military service and was automatically assessed a $3 deduction for clothing. In June 1864, Congress granted equal pay of $13 per month to the U.S. colored troops and made the mandate retroactive. Upon returning from the war, Freeman resided with his family near Harlansdale Farm. He purchased an adjacent parcel of land for $70 and built a little white cottage that still exists today at 303 Franklin Road. It is one of the 2 19th century homes built by the first generation of free African Americans in Franklin. The other home is the historic McLemore House, located in Hard Bargain, which now houses the African American Museum. On November 22, 1889, Freeman and his wife, Patty, bought a parcel of land for $260 at the intersection of Church Street and 2nd Avenue in downtown Franklin. Today, million-dollar brownstones are at that exact location.
Robert Rucker Sr. was the only African-American land and home developer in Franklin, Tennessee during the mid-1900s. He was known for his unique building style of using a type of rainbow-colored brick and always including arches at the entrance of each home. Many of these houses are still standing and are easily identifiable in Hard Bargain and on Fair Street. Rucker was also instrumental in overseeing the African-American crews that helped build the factory and the historic 5 Points building. The factory is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and 5 Points has been nationally recognized for its historic significance. In March 1948, Rucker and his wife, Florence, purchased 16 acres of land at the intersection of West Main Street and Downs Boulevard from Walter A. Roberts, John McGavick, and Hattie McGavick heirs for $5,600. He began developing the first and only black chartered subdivision in Franklin, still known today as Rucker Subdivision. Robert Rucker governed the subdivision with strict and controversial bylaws, one of which stated that for a period of 25 years, only persons of African descent could own or occupy homes in the subdivision. He also adamantly restricted clubs, dance halls, or the selling of beer and whiskey on the premises. These restrictions revealed an attempt for black developers to remain in control of their property and maintain a family-oriented neighborhood. The Rucker subdivision also housed Franklin's first NAACP headquarters, where many meetings were held to discuss segregation. The original NAACP building is located on the premises of 105 Rucker Avenue. One of the most noteworthy contributions that Rucker made to the Franklin community occurred on September 18, 1954, when Rucker and 10 African-American local leaders assisted in creating a recreational center. Since Willow Plunge, the popular swimming pool and recreation center for whites, was off limits to Franklin's black citizens, the men established a facility called Rucker Memorial Park. It was the only recreational park for African Americans until Jim Warren Park was integrated in the early 1970s. Rucker Park was a treasure for the community. It included an athletic field, swings, picnic tables, a concession stand, and a community center. Many baseball games were played there. The only thing lacking was a swimming pool. Local blacks had to drive to Hadley Park in Nashville for a swim. There are no remnants left from the park once located on Downs Boulevard. However, there are at least a dozen homes left in the subdivision, including Robert Rucker Sr.'s home, which is identified by a historical marker. You may now walk to Marker 8, located to your right in Section C, and hear the story of Maddie Odiestead as told by local leader Monique McCullough.
Maddie Odiestead, born in July of 1885, was known as one of the most skilled nurses in Franklin, Tennessee during the early 1900s. In 1911, Maddie graduated in the second class of the newly established Hubbard Hospital School for Colored Nurses, a division of Meharry Medical College. This was during the time of the modern nursing movement, a movement that offered women a career other than teaching. This was a phenomenal accomplishment for Maddie, as there weren't many African Americans who were afforded the opportunity to go to college, much less a chance to go to nursing school. Only 12 students graduated from Hubbard the previous year, and by 1928, the total graduate count was a modest 138. By 1915, there were approximately 5,300 African American college graduates in every area of study across the country. This was less than 1/10 of the African American population. While Franklin had many competent midwives, as a registered nurse, Maddie was truly a commodity. She studied in the surgical department under the well-respected Dr. W.D. Haggard, who taught gynecology and abdominal surgery and was a national leader in the American Medical Association and the American College of Surgery. Diligently serving the homes of the Franklin community for 22 years, Maddie delivered hundreds of babies during her lifetime. She was also known for being extremely skillful in handling typhoid fever cases, especially during Tennessee's typhoid epidemic in 1924. Born only one generation out of slavery, Maddie was the daughter of Martha and Ephraim Odie. Ephraim was a slave who served in the Confederate Army during the Civil War. Her grandfather, Martin Scott, was also a slave. However, he had acquired his freedom prior to the war, which gave Maddie and her family economic advantages for that time period. For 48 years, Maddie's grandfather was a well-established boot and shoemaker. He purchased a home at the corner of Fair Street and 11th Avenue, where Maddie and all her siblings were born. At the time, they were the only African Americans residing on the street. On September 25, 1927, Maddie Odie married World War I veteran Noble Winstead in a ceremony officiated by Franklin's legendary A.N.C. Williams. She died 10 years later at the age of 52 on November 21, 1937. Approach Marker 9 to the right of Maddie's tombstone and hear the story about her father, Ephraim Odie, as told by music producer Dan Pitts.
Ephraim Odie served in the 154th Tennessee Infantry in the Confederate Army during the Civil War. Born a slave in Virginia on February 6, 1845, Odie was brought to Williamson County at the age of 5 and was owned by John H. Odie. In the fall of 1862, Ephraim's owner allowed Anthony Camp, the quartermaster of the 1st Tennessee Manny Brigade, to utilize Ephraim in the Army. He began his service at the onset of the Battle of Murfreesboro and was a cook throughout the war. This was not unusual because the Confederate Army was extremely cautious in allowing slaves to serve in combat roles, with most of them serving as body servants and laborers. In May 1865, Ephraim, along with most local soldiers, returned to Franklin after the close of the war. This was a time when life was hard for everyone, as many southern towns lay in ruins and there were minimal job opportunities. Freed slaves were usually homeless and penniless, but Ephraim managed to not only survive, but also profit by becoming a carpenter. In 1867, Ephraim Odie married Martha Scott, daughter of Martin Scott, a slave who was freed prior to the Civil War. Mr. Scott was a prominent boot and shoemaker as well as a homeowner. This gave Ephraim and his bride an economic advantage over most in the community. Mr. Scott purchased a home on Fair Street, where all 5 of Ephraim and Martha's children were born and raised. At the time, the Odies were the only African Americans residing on Fair Street, currently a well-preserved and historic area of town. On April 9, 1921, the Tennessee legislature passed an act providing pensions of $10 per month for African American men who served as servants and cooks in the Confederate Army. Ephraim applied for the pension because by that time he was primarily being taken care of by his children. He was approved for the pension in June 1921. Ephraim died on September 7, 1923, 2 years after he began receiving military compensation for serving in the Civil War. Proceed to marker number 10, located in Section C, where you will hear the story of J.T. Patton as told by Pastor Chris Williamson.
Reverend John T. Patton, a name associated with one of the oldest Middle Tennessee businesses in the African American community, was the owner and director of the Patton Brothers Funeral Homes. Mr. Patton founded the funeral home during the time of horse-drawn hearses and walking funeral processions. Though he lacked a high school education, money, and collateral, Mr. Patton, son of Will and Lucy, was able to secure a loan based on the integrity of his family's name. Later joined in business by his brothers, the Patton brothers became the state's leading black undertakers, owning funeral homes in Nashville, Dixon, and Mount Pleasant, and even in Kentucky and Michigan. Over 100 years old, the establishment is still thriving under the name Patton Brothers Funeral Home in Nashville, Tennessee. John T. Patton, better known as J.T., and his wife Alice Odie Patton, upheld the integrity of the family name throughout their life and were fortunate to send their 3 children to college in the 1930s, during a time when most blacks were getting a substandard education. One of J.T.'s sons, Thomas Gordon Patton, even made history when he graduated in 1944 from the Army Air Corps as a prestigious Tuskegee Airman, the first all-black flying unit established by President Franklin D. Roosevelt during World War II. The Tuskegee Airmen came about as a result of pressure from civil rights organizations and members of the black media to increase military opportunities for African Americans. Thomas Gordon Patton successfully flew P-40s in Tunisia, North Africa, during the invasion of Sicily and on VE Day, the day that the war ended in Germany. He was also one of the few Tuskegee Airmen of the 332nd Fighter Group who flew P-51 Mustangs, better known as Red Tails. These Red Tails were unique to their fighter group and escorted bombers deep in Nazi Germany. From 1941 to 1946, there were 996 Tuskegee pilots, only half of whom were able to fly during combat. One of those brave men was a local Franklin man with the last name Patton, son of J.T. and Alice.
This concludes the Toussant Louverture audio cell phone